Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at American family life,
Okay.
and we're going to be doing that specifically through this really interesting couple, Vanessa and Dan.
Yeah.
We have about 2 hours of conversation with them,
Yeah.
and in that time they talk about
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy, they talk
Mm-hmm.
about parenting with multiple kids, and they even get into some of their thoughts about education in America. So
Cool.
we're going to cover a lot of ground.
Sounds good.
So to start off, Vanessa and Dan are actually expecting their third child,
Oh, wow.
a little girl.
Okay.
And they've decided to name her Matilda.
Matilda.
Now, Matilda's interesting because in the U.S., it's actually not a very popular name. It's like 400th in popularity.
Huh.
But in places like the U.K. and Australia and the Nordic countries, Matilda is a top 20 name.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So I don't know, it kind of makes you wonder, are they trendsetters? Or
Whoa.
is this just kind of a sign of our increasingly interconnected world that names are kind of crossing borders a little more now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about what that name choice might say about how they see their daughter fitting into the world. Maybe they want her to have both her American roots and a broader, more global perspective.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think, listener? What do you think about the name Matilda?
Yeah.
Can you picture a little Tilly running around
Yeah.
causing trouble? I have a feeling she's going to add a whole new dimension
Yeah.
to their family dynamic.
For sure.
But getting to this point of a third child was not necessarily an easy decision.
Right.
Dan, who grew up with two siblings,
Okay.
he was kind of ready to go for that bigger family. But Vanessa, she had some reservations.
Understandably so. I mean,
Right.
pregnancy, childbirth, just the added responsibility of another human, that's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents out there probably grapple with those feelings too,
Yeah.
weighing their desires against the practical realities of expanding a family.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. And, one thing that Vanessa even mentioned was this third pregnancy is actually a lot tougher on her physically.
Oh, really?
Even though she had two really positive birth experiences at a birth center previously. But she mentioned that, unfortunately, that birth center closed down because of insurance issues.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. This, unfortunately, points to a larger issue in the U.S. healthcare system. Birth centers
Right.
often struggle to stay afloat financially, which then limits options for expectant parents,
Yeah.
especially those who are looking for a more personalized birth experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame to see those alternative models facing such challenges.
Yeah, and this led Vanessa to choose a home birth with a midwife for this pregnancy.
Okay.
Which again, home births are becoming more and more popular
Mm.
as people are seeking a greater control over their birthing experience.
Yeah.
But it also highlights the disparities in access to care in the U.S.
Absolutely. The U.S. does offer diverse birthing options, but the affordability and accessibility vary greatly depending on,
Location, insurance coverage, all sorts of factors.
it's a really complicated landscape to navigate.
It is.
And, one thing that I have to admit I was surprised to learn was that every single one of their pregnancies has been meticulously planned.
Oh,
Dan even joked at one point and said it's impossible to be married to Vanessa without a plan.
I love that.
So it's just kind of a great reminder that family planning is a very personal journey.
It is. It is. And it's important to approach these conversations with sensitivity,
Yeah.
understanding that every couple has their own unique story and their own reasons for their choices.
Yeah. And so now with 3 little ones on the way, I think it's natural to wonder about sibling rivalry.
Mm.
But Vanessa and Dan seem to be pretty confident that their 2 sons, who are 6 and 3, will actually welcome Matilda with excitement, not jealousy.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and they've even noticed that both of the boys have already started exhibiting some pretty nurturing behavior
Ah.
toward other babies, like using that kind of classic baby voice that we all seem to do.
Right. But Vanessa does acknowledge that the real test might come when Matilda gets a little older and is really interacting more with her
Yeah.
brothers.
Yeah, sharing toys and parental attention, that's a whole different ballgame.
Right, exactly. And that brings up another topic that's really important, which is, post-birth support.
Mm-hmm.
Vanessa and Dan mentioned that Dan's mom is going to come help out for a little while, although it's not clear how long.
Okay,
And they do have a network of babysitters that they use in their day-to-day life.
right.
But they also pointed out that in the U.S., the government doesn't actually provide any subsidies for newborns
Okay.
unless a family is already receiving some sort of financial assistance.
So it's really different from a lot of other developed countries where parental leave and subsidized childcare are kind of just the norm.
Yeah. It's a really stark contrast. And I think it really highlights the lack of a social safety net
Yeah.
for families in the U.S.
Yeah. The financial burden of raising a family in the U.S. can be really substantial. And the government's role is pretty minimal. So a lot of families have to rely on personal networks or, private resources to make ends meet.
Yeah, and speak to finances, the cost of having a baby in the U.S. is
Yeah.
a whole other topic.
Yeah.
Health insurance is a major factor.
Right.
And of course, for self-employed people like Vanessa and Dan, those costs can be even higher.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that a hospital birth without insurance can cost up to $10,000.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a staggering amount.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And it really underscores the, complexities and often prohibitive costs associated with healthcare here in the U.S.
Yeah, it's definitely a reality check for anyone who's, thinking about starting or expanding a family in the U.S.
Sure.
But you know enough about the finances. Let's move on to something a little bit lighter.
Okay.
So Vanessa and Dan were very clear that 3 kids is enough for them.
Okay.
Absolutely not, was their response.
Yeah. I mean, after 3 pregnancies,
Yeah.
it's understandable that Vanessa in particular feels like her body has been through enough.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents, especially mothers, reach a point where they feel complete with their families and they're ready to move on to different priorities.
Yeah. And, if we hear another pregnancy announcement from these 2, we'll know that a plan went seriously off the rails.
That's right.
But right now, their focus is on balancing work and childcare, which is something I think a lot of us can relate to.
For sure.
So Vanessa runs her own business,
Okay.
and Dan works at a school which conveniently is on the same schedule and has all the same vacations as their son.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah.
And so their childcare strategy involves preschool babysitters and occasional help from Dan's mom.
Okay.
So it sounds like they have it all figured out.
It does, but I can only imagine the mental load of managing all those moving parts.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. And Vanessa even mentioned that she's already filming months' worth of content to prepare for the upcoming busy period. So, that speaks to the dedication and the often overwhelming demands placed on working mothers,
It does.
especially, those who are entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Trying to stay ahead of the curve while juggling family life, it's a constant balancing act.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, is that level of preemptive work really sustainable in the long run?
Yeah, it's something to think about.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that, listener?
Yeah.
Have you found any ways to manage those similar challenges?
Mm.
So let's get into some of their specific parenting strategies.
Okay.
They emphasize the importance of individual attention for each child and of avoiding comparisons.
Yeah.
Which I think is really wise advice.
It is, focusing on each child's unique strengths and needs. That's crucial for fostering a sense of belonging and self-worth within the family. And, comparisons, they can breed resentment and they can really undermine those efforts.
Absolutely. And their insights into the middle child dynamic I thought were particularly interesting. So Freddie, their middle son, seems to be a very classic middle child.
Okay.
Really craving attention, having a strong personality.
Yeah, and that kind of aligns with a lot of observations about middle children. They often feel sandwiched between the older, more responsible sibling and the younger, more adorable one.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of our listeners out there with siblings can relate to that feeling of kind of vying for a place in the family.
Right.
So how do they navigate that need for attention from Freddie without, exacerbating the situation?
Well, they mentioned a book called Peaceful Parent, Happy Siblings.
Okay.
And it suggests that rather than viewing sibling conflict as a problem to be solved, it's actually an opportunity for growth and learning.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a really helpful reframing.
Yeah, instead of trying to eliminate conflict altogether, we can teach children really valuable skills in communication negotiation,
Yeah,
empathy.
exactly.
And speaking of challenges, let's talk about a topic that I think is on every parent's mind these days. Technology and its influence on children.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is a big one. So Vanessa and Dan have a strict no tablet policy,
Oh, wow.
which I thought was pretty bold.
It is a bold stance in today's, tech-saturated world.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're choosing to prioritize other activities and shared experiences over individual screen time.
Yeah, they're concerned about the addictive nature of technology and the potential negative impact it could have on their kids.
Yeah.
So instead of tablets, they're opting for, family movie nights
Okay.
or shared viewing experiences on the TV so that it's a more controlled environment.
It is, and it's a proactive approach, acknowledging the need to set boundaries and create a family culture that values
Right.
real life interaction over, digital distractions.
But as their kids get older, they do anticipate some pushback.
Right, especially as their peers, become more and more immersed in the digital world.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of parents are struggling with.
It is.
Finding that balance between allowing their kids to fit in with their peers, but also protecting them from the potential downsides of too much screen time.
It's a delicate balance for sure, and it's a conversation that will likely continue to evolve as technology advances.
For sure. And on a more practical note, I thought Vanessa and Dan were surprisingly candid about their approach to chores.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they admitted that they're not the tidiest people, which I think makes them even more relatable.
Yeah.
But what I found fascinating was their system for dividing responsibilities.
Okay.
They described it as running their household like a business
Oh, wow.
with meetings, lists, designated roles.
That's amazing. I love that.
I know, it's great, right?
Yeah, it's a great way to bring structure and organization
Yeah,
to what can often be a very chaotic aspect of family life.
exactly. And during Vanessa's pregnancies, Dan really stepped up
Okay,
and took on the bulk of the chores.
good for him.
Yeah, a real commitment to teamwork.
It is, and it highlights the importance of flexibility and mutual support in a partnership. It's not about rigid roles, but adapting to each other's needs and sharing the load.
Yeah, and they also emphasized the value of delegating tasks
Oh, yeah.
when possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, they hire someone to mow their lawn
Okay.
because they recognize that their time and energy are better spent elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a smart strategy for any busy family, allowing them to focus on what truly matters.
Yeah.
And recognizing that it's okay to ask for help and to outsource certain tasks to free up time.
Yeah, and I think what really stood out to me was their emphasis on open communication and that shared sense of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Their system isn't about keeping score. It's about working together as a team.
I love that. And that brings us to a really interesting turning point in their story.
Yes.
Vanessa and Dan made a significant decision regarding their business and Dan's role in the family dynamic.
This is where things get really interesting. We're going to dive into all of that in part 2.
Okay, can't wait.
So don't go anywhere. We'll be back after a quick break.
Sounds good. Welcome back. So we left off with Vanessa and Dan facing a pretty major transition.
Yeah.
Dan actually made the decision to step away from their shared business.
Wow, that's a bold move.
Yeah.
Considering they built this business together from the ground up.
It is.
What prompted that kind of shift?
Well, they alluded to some challenges that arose from working together.
Yeah.
They felt like it was blurring the lines between their professional and personal lives.
Yeah.
And it created an imbalance that just wasn't really healthy for their relationship.
I think that's a common struggle for couples who work together.
It is.
It's important to recognize, when those boundaries become a little too porous.
Right.
And how that can really impact the well-being of the partnership.
Yeah.
But it also raises some questions like, what about the financial implications of Dan leaving the business?
Mm-hmm.
Could that put extra pressure on Vanessa?
Yeah, those are valid concerns.
Yeah.
It definitely takes courage to make such a significant change,
It does.
especially when there are financial risks involved.
Yeah.
But it also shows a real commitment to prioritizing their relationship and their individual needs.
Yeah, it speaks to their willingness to adapt and evolve as a couple.
Right.
Understanding that what worked for them in one phase of life might not be the best fit for another.
Exacto.
So what does Dan do now?
Well, he actually transitioned to a completely different field.
Oh,
He's now working at a school,
okay.
and it seems like he chose this school specifically because it aligns with his values, particularly their emphasis on outdoor learning.
Oh, wow.
So it sounds like she's found a renewed sense of purpose and joy in this new role.
That's awesome. I love that, it's a good reminder that sometimes stepping outside of our comfort zones
It is.
and pursuing new passions can lead to unexpected fulfillment.
For sure.
So how has this shift affected Vanessa and her role in the business?
Well, it seems to have been a positive change for her as well.
Okay.
She's now able to focus more fully on her role as CEO, knowing that Dan is content and thriving in his own pursuits.
It's a win-win.
It's strengthening both their individual paths and their bond as a couple.
Their story is a really powerful reminder that supporting each other's dreams,
Yeah.
even when it means making unconventional choices,
Mm-hmm.
can ultimately lead to greater happiness
Right.
and a stronger foundation for the relationship.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like they found a really good balance.
They have.
Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about education.
Okay.
So we know Vanessa and Dan are both college graduates,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a somewhat surprising perspective on its necessity.
Yeah, that's right. Despite their own educational achievements,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily see college as the only path to success,
Mhm.
especially considering the burden of student loan debt that they both carry.
It's a sentiment that resonates with a lot of people,
It does.
particularly those who graduated between 2005 and 2015,
Yeah.
which was a time of, significant economic uncertainty.
It was
A lot of people entered the workforce only to find that their very expensive degrees
right.
didn't actually guarantee them the high-paying jobs that they were promised.
Right, and I think their perspective reflects a shifting landscape in higher education.
Yeah.
We're seeing a growing awareness of alternative paths to success,
Hmm.
trade schools, apprenticeships, entrepreneurship.
Right.
These options don't require a traditional four-year degree,
Yeah.
and they offer more direct routes to specific careers.
Yeah, it's about finding the path that best aligns with an individual's talents and aspirations,
Exactly.
rather than adhering to this one-size-fits-all model.
Right.
And it sounds like Vanessa and Dan are really determined to expose their children to a wider range of options, encouraging them to explore different paths
Yeah.
without feeling pressured to follow a specific trajectory.
They seem to value a more holistic approach to education,
Yeah.
recognizing that success can be defined in many ways
Mm-hmm.
and that the traditional college route might not be the best fit for everyone.
Now let's go back to something we touched on earlier,
Okay.
sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
So how are they planning to navigate this with 3 kids?
Well, they emphasize the importance of individual attention for each child.
Okay.
They make a conscious effort to spend one-on-one time with each of their sons,
Mm-hmm.
fostering that sense of uniqueness and belonging.
That's so crucial, I think.
It is.
It's about recognizing and celebrating each child's individuality,
Right.
rather than creating this competitive atmosphere where they're constantly being compared.
Exactly.
And what about those inevitable moments of conflict
Mm-hmm.
that arise between siblings?
Well, they stress the importance of avoiding comparisons,
Okay.
which, as we know, can really fuel sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
Instead, they focus on helping their children understand and communicate their feelings effectively.
So it's about teaching them to see conflict,
Mm-hmm.
not as a battle to be won or lost,
Right.
but as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Exactly. And as we mentioned earlier, they found a lot of valuable insights in that book, Peaceful Parent, Happy Siblings, which really encourages this approach to resolving sibling disagreements.
It's a great resource for any parent out there
It is.
who's struggling with sibling rivalry.
It provides really practical tips
Yeah.
on reframing conflict, fostering empathy, and building those stronger bonds between siblings.
So it's about shifting our perspective
Yeah.
from trying to eliminate conflict
Right.
to seeing it as a natural part of family life
It is.
and an opportunity to teach valuable life skills.
Exactly.
And now for a topic that's relevant to, I think, every parent in today's digital age,
Mhm.
technology and its impact on children.
Yeah. Vanessa and Dan have taken a pretty strong stance on this.
Okay.
They've implemented a strict no-tablet policy in their home.
Wow.
It's a pretty bold move in a world where screens are just ubiquitous.
It is.
And it really highlights their commitment to prioritizing other activities and experiences.
Yeah, it's a refreshing perspective,
Yeah.
especially amidst, these growing concerns about technology addiction
Right.
and the potential negative effects of too much screen time.
Yeah. They've chosen to create a family culture
Yeah.
that values real-life interaction, creativity exploration over digital distractions.
And instead of individual screen time, they opt for shared viewing experiences,
Mm-hmm.
like family movie nights,
Yeah.
which promotes connection and communication
It does.
and, creates those opportunities for shared laughter and conversation.
Right. It's about being mindful and intentional with technology, using it as a tool for connection rather than letting it become a barrier.
But have they talked about how they'll handle the inevitable pressure from their children,
Mm-hmm.
especially as their peers become more immersed in the digital world?
They do. They acknowledge the challenges ahead,
Yeah.
recognizing that striking a balance between allowing their children to fit in with their peers
Right.
while also protecting them from those potential downsides of excessive screen time. It's going to be an ongoing conversation.
It's a conversation that a lot of parents are having these days,
It is.
and there's no easy answers.
There aren't.
It requires constant vigilance adaptation
Mm-hmm.
and open communication.
Absolutely.
And finally, let's revisit Vanessa and Dan's approach to household responsibilities.
Okay.
We know they're not the tidiest folks,
Right.
but they seem to have found a system that works for them.
They do. They describe their approach as running their household like a business,
Yeah.
complete with meetings, lists, clearly defined roles.
I love that.
It brings a sense of structure and organization
Yeah.
to what can often feel like a very chaotic aspect of family life.
Right. And during Vanessa's pregnancies,
Mm-hmm.
Dan stepped up and took on the majority of the household tasks,
Yeah.
which demonstrates a true partnership.
It does. It's a beautiful example of flexibility and mutual support.
Hmm.
You know, it's not about rigid roles,
Yeah.
but adapting to each other's needs and sharing the load.
Mm-hmm. And they also emphasize the importance of delegating tasks when possible,
Right.
like hiring someone to mow the lawn.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that it's okay to ask for help
Mm-hmm.
and that outsourcing certain tasks can free up time and energy for things that matter more.
Right, like spending quality time together as a family.
Exactly. And what really resonated with me was their emphasis on open communication
Yeah.
and a shared sense of responsibility.
It's not about keeping score. It's about working together as a team.
And it sounds like they found a balance that works for them,
They have.
recognizing that needs and priorities can evolve over time,
Mm-hmm.
and that flexibility is key.
Absolutely.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Vanessa and Dan,
It does.
two parents navigating the complexities of modern family life.
Their story offers a really interesting glimpse
It does.
into the joys and challenges and decisions
Yeah.
that shape the experience of raising a family today.
Yeah.
And I think they've provided some valuable insights for our listeners to consider as they navigate their own journeys.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
let's leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question,
I love it.
inspired by Vanessa and Dan's story.
Okay, I'm ready.
Vanessa and Dan's story, it's really highlighted some of these key themes that we see running through modern family life.
Yeah.
Work, education, technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess as we wrap up, let's think about how are these forces shaping families?
Right.
And how can we best prepare future generations?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen how the traditional model of a single income household
Right.
is kind of evolving with both parents often working and juggling those childcare responsibilities.
Yeah.
It definitely brings challenges, but it also, creates opportunities for greater equality and shared responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. And the landscape of education is constantly changing too.
Mhm.
The value of a college degree is being questioned.
Right.
Alternative paths to success are gaining recognition.
Yeah. How do we guide young people to make informed choices about their education and future careers in this ever-evolving landscape?
Yeah, it's tough. It's about fostering critical thinking skills, encouraging them to explore their passions,
Mm-hmm.
and being open to paths that may not fit that traditional mold.
Right. And we can't ignore the elephant in the room technology.
Right, exactly.
Right.
The digital age presents both incredible opportunities and potential pitfalls.
It does.
Vanessa and Dan's very strict approach to screen time is one way to navigate this.
Right.
But as their kids get older, they're going to face pressure to conform to their peers who are more tech savvy.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we find that balance between allowing access to technology while protecting children from those potential negative effects?
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act, I think.
It is.
Teaching digital literacy, setting healthy boundaries, modeling responsible tech, use ourselves.
Right. And I think most importantly, keeping those lines of communication open with our children.
Absolutely. Open communication adaptability,
Yes.
a willingness to challenge conventional thinking. I feel like those are themes that keep coming up
They are.
in Vanessa and Dan's approach to family life.
They've shown that there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Nope.
It's about finding what works best for your family,
Yeah.
embracing the messy and beautiful journey of parenthood,
Yeah.
and being willing to learn and grow along the way.
So listeners, you reflect on Vanessa and Dan's story.
Mm-hmm.
We encourage you to ask yourself, how are you shaping your own family culture?
Yeah.
What values are you prioritizing?
Mm-hmm.
And how are you navigating these ever-evolving forces
Right.
of work, education, and technology?
There's no right or wrong answer.
Nope.
It's about finding your own path, embracing change,
Yeah.
and creating a fulfilling and meaningful family life that works for you and your loved ones.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into American family life.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
We hope you gained some valuable insights,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps even a fresh perspective on the joys and challenges of raising a family in today's world.
For sure.
Until next time.